This isn't something that we really constantly think about. It's something that you're being specifically targeted for. Hey everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Conscious Counsel podcast with your host, Cory Sterling. That's me. I hope you're doing fantastic wherever it is in the world you're listening to this. And this week's episode is a really big one. And before I hop into the topic, I just want to remind you that the reason why I record these episodes and I take the time to reflect on my legal practice and what I'm doing with health and wellness entrepreneurs from a legal perspective is to help you protect and grow your health and wellness business with confidence and clarity. That's the name of the game. I want you to understand the new rules that are affecting the landscape. I want you to understand the new issues and problems that are coming up with our clients and what a small business health and wellness entrepreneur, what sort of legal issues and obstacles they're going to have to come over. This week's episode is a very interesting one because it's reflecting some of the new changes that are taking place within the Americans with Disabilities Act, what we call the ADA. And so the ADA in recent years and recent months has passed new types of legislations and new standards and new thresholds which small business owners need to be on point and follow. And I went through an issue with a client last week where there was a potential lawsuit from not being ADA compliant. And there's a couple of high-profile cases that have taken place in the news revolving big gyms and health and wellness studios. So without further ado, in this week's episode, I'm going to hop into explaining a little bit about what the ADA changes are. And in order to really understand this, you have to understand that the way the law works is that society advances and then the government needs to enact new laws that reflect society standards and morals and values and ethics. And the ADA has been around for a long time, and there's a lot of compliance questions that we need to be a part of. But this new wave of ADA rules and compliance have to do with digital ADA. So the real issue here is through your website or your booking software or your apps, are you discriminating against someone with disabilities? And I know that it's not intuitive. And traditionally, the way that we thought about all of this was think about someone coming to your studio and being in a wheelchair, they need access to a ramp. If you don't have the ramp, it's determined discriminatory. But okay, now they're in the studio. The way the government has changed the rules and the laws essentially is that they now make all of your online digital presence needing to be ADA compliant as well. So now essentially your website, it's not just a website, but it's sort of like your front door. And what that means is that if someone can't access the site or book a class or engage in your services, it can be considered discrimination. And now, so the big thing that to understand what's changing is that there's been a transition in how the ADA is enforced, where it's gone from best practices and this is what you should do, and ideally this is what you do, to actual enforcement. And in 2025, there were more than 5,000 accessibility lawsuits filed. And that number just keeps going more and more and more higher and higher. And the scary thing about this needing to be ADA compliant from a digital perspective is that some people will use robots to leverage and target small businesses online. So there's a way that you could say, hey, find all of these businesses and find who's not compliant. And then sort of like in a slip and fall sort of approach, people will see what businesses are not compliant, send a demand letter, and essentially demand money. So it's obviously very, very concerning to small business owners because A, this isn't something that we really constantly think about, and that B, it's something that you're being specifically targeted for, which is really, really challenging. And a lot of the times when an issue like this or demand letter is sent, there will be a quick settlement because small business owner just wants it to be finished and doesn't want it to drag out and doesn't want to incur lots of legal fees for something that, they can't really show that they were compliant with. So I think the bigger question is, even if we're not talking about lawsuits, but just sort of asking the question of, is everyone able to access your offerings, your studio, to book a class with you, to watch videos with you, everything that it is that you do, are you being fully compliant? And it's a really big issue. And at Conscious Counsel, what we've started doing is we've now included an ADA policy that we encourage all of our clients to put as a footer on their website, in addition to having a privacy policy and a social media disclaimer and all of the other things that you use. And the story that I went through with a client last week was very, very interesting because they have a physical therapy studio and they were ADA compliant in their building, but they were not compliant digitally online. And there wasn't an issue that came to them, but there was an issue of another physical therapist in the community of where they lived and where they worked. And in that instant, that person received a letter from someone saying, hey, you're not ADA compliant digitally. And, there's a fee and there's a penalty and this is what you owe us. And she was sharing that story with my client. And then my client came to me and was like, hey, how do we resolve this? And I was like, cool, we got the fix. This is the agreement that you need in order to be compliant. But also that physical therapist had told me stories from her own practice where people used to come in to use the space and would use the bathroom and would just look for very, very simple things that were not in compliance with ADA standards and then threaten to sue. And it's crazy when you think about the large scale of liability that exists. It seems endless. And what we're seeing is a rise in ADA issues. So I know that SoulCycle had a very famous public settlement for millions of dollars around not being ADA accessible. I know that Equinox Gym, also that I used to teach group fitness at, has had an issue. And I think Planet Fitness also had a big issue. All of these were like class action lawsuits for not offering accessibility in a digital perspective to their clients. And so it's very, very real. And for me, it's just a new example of a new law and something new that needs to be taken care of and something that we need to address. So at Conscious Counsel, what we've done is we've created a new ADA compliant agreement that we put as a footer on the website to make sure that everyone's covered, and that if there's an issue and someone files a complaint against you, we can show that you were following all of the rules. So this is a newer sort of legal issue that I see our clients coming up against. But having gone through that story with my client, I see how real it is and how it really affects people. And my client's friend who received that letter about not being digitally compliant and discriminating digitally, it cost them a lot of money and a lot of stress, and it's not fun for anybody. No one wants to deal with it. So in summary, the point of this episode and really what I'm trying to share is that there are changes taking place with the Americans with Disability Act. And now there's a much stronger sense of enforcing the rules and not just like suggested practices. You should be accessible to everyone, but especially from a digital perspective, it's very easy to find out whether or not a small health and wellness business is being compliant or not. Another thing that's important to know is that there are people who, and I know that this is so crazy for us, but there are people who specifically will go looking for businesses that are not ADA compliant in an attempt to try to threaten them with a lawsuit or sue them or bring a legal action against them. And the really, really important things that are taking place is making sure that you're not discriminating digitally. So that means meeting the various requirements that you have to have in order to be ADA compliant online, and that everyone has equal access to the materials you offer and the services that you offer, irrespective of any disabilities they may have digitally or not. And then ultimately, I just shared a story of a client of mine who we were able to set up and get secured before there was an issue, but who had a colleague who had gone through this particular issue themselves and actually received a demand letter and had to respond to that demand letter. And I think they settled. I'm not sure. I didn't get all of the information from my client, but that was really the gist of it. So I hope that you found this information helpful. I hope that it sort of just puts a little bleep on your radar of another thing that we need to do and have in order to be fully compliant. And if you have any questions, you can just send us an email. My email is Cory@consciouscounsel.ca, Cory@consciouscounsel.ca, or you can just go to the website and shoot us a note. And if you want information about learning to be ADA digitally compliant, let me know, and we're here to support you. All I want is my clients to have businesses that are running smoothly, that they're confident, that are protected. And this is the next wave of issues that we've seen coming up. And so the job never ends and there's always more to do. That being said, I hope that you enjoyed this and that whatever you do, make sure that you work with a lawyer who loves you. All my best. Have a wonderful week.